Even if you only have 5 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes to make a presentation, you can make that presentation and you can do it effectively. What I'm assuming is that you know your content, you know what you want to do, that you're a subject expert in what it is that you're being presented, even if it's simply an idea that you have. So whether you are going into the locker room and you are speaking to your sports team, whether it is the beginning of the season and it's the opening day of training camp, whether you are a corporate leader of some kind in a conference room, whether you are a nonprofit leader that is casting vision to your board or to your donors, whether you are the pastor of a church, frankly, even if you're trying to get clarity on your own goals and you're just having a conversation with yourself, all of these contexts will work. Welcome to the Today Counts show. Today does count because it impacts, it influences your tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. The Today Counts podcast is sponsored by the generous donors of the Lead Today community. I'm your host, Tim Piper. Today on the Today Counts show, we're going to be talking about communication. We're going to be talking about talking. We're going to be talking about staying on point and presenting something to a group of people more effectively. That's what we're going to talk about. It's really kind of a napkin and pen kind of preparation. What I want to do is I want to teach you that even if you only have 5 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes to make a presentation, you can make that presentation and you can do it effectively. What I'm assuming is that you know your content, you know what you want to do, that you're a subject expert in what it is that you're being presented, even if it's simply an idea that you have. So whether you are going into the locker room and you are speaking to your sports team, whether it is the beginning of the season and it's the opening day of training camp, whether you are a corporate leader of some kind in a conference room, whether you are a nonprofit leader that is casting vision to your board or to your donors, whether you are the pastor of a church, frankly, even if you're trying to get clarity on your own goals and you're just having a conversation with yourself, all of these contexts will work. I don't know that I really have named this process, but I'll make up a name right now. I'm just going to call it the triangle of communication. I don't know if that's a very good name, but there is something about the number 3 that is unique to our existence. And as you know, a triangle has 3 sides to it. You might also know that in Scripture, God is explained to us in 3 persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. If you've ever studied landscaping or interior decorating, you will probably notice that things are done in odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. Rarely, if ever, 2, 4, 6, or 8. Now, I don't know what to make out of all of that, but I am going to be sticking to the number 3 as we go through this process. So one of the first things that I do, let's just say that I've been asked to, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pretend I'm the head coach of a football team. And here's the context. I am getting ready to speak an opening day training camp to the whole group. Or frankly, it could be the whole group, or it could be to my coaching staff. It could be behind closed doors. And, I'm starting to create momentum by starting with the leadership. Of course, that's always a positive thing to do. And what I'm imagining in my mind's eye is that there's a whiteboard and I've got some markers. Now, if I don't have that, I don't need that, because if I took my napkin and my pen and I created this triangle of communication on a little piece of paper or whatever that I could keep in front of me, then that would be fine too. but it always helps when you can draw in front of people. And again, whether you're giving a keynote speech or whatever, sometimes that old school stuff is more interesting than the typical, here's just another deck that someone's going to present. So anyway, if you are watching this podcast, what I'm doing right now in my Remarkable is I'm going to draw a triangle. Now, if you're not watching and you're listening instead, you can imagine that on a piece of paper, I'm drawing a triangle, or kind of what looks like a triangle. And what I'm going to do towards the bottom of the triangle, I've already done that, but to the bottom of the triangle, I've drawn a line across, almost as to suggest that there is a foundation at the bottom of the triangle. That's the first thing that I'm doing. And then at the top of the triangle, I'm going to draw another horizontal line inside the lines, kind of like the tip of an iceberg or a smaller triangle at the top is being exposed. All right. So I have at the bottom what simply kind of looks like a very funky rectangle at the bottom inside the triangle. I also have at the top what looks like a smaller triangle or the tip of an iceberg, because I've drawn two horizontal lines, one at the top and one at the bottom. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start thinking to myself regarding this football team. The first thing that a leader needs to do when they're communicating to their teammates, their colleagues, their team players, is they've got to describe what is. They got to be able to live in the present. So to live in the present, you do have to bring context to the past, usually bring some history. So what I would call this is, and if you're on the treadmill running and you're not watching this, or if you're driving down the road, just follow with me. We got one triangle. I've drawn two horizontal lines inside the triangle, one at the very top and one at the very bottom. The one at the very bottom is thicker and kind of looks like what you might call the foundation of the triangle. At the top, we have what we might call, the smallest triangle or the tip of the iceberg at the top. So I'm going to label these. At the very bottom, I'm going to label that foundational section, what is. W-H-A-T, what is. And maybe I'm going to put a question mark in the front and in the back of that statement, what is. Okay? And then at the top of the triangle, I can't fit it in, so I'm going to draw an arrow outside of it, and I'm going to write the words, what can be. What can be. And I think I'll put a question mark after that, all right? And then inside the body of the triangle, I'm going to write in three numbers. On the left edge of the triangle, I'm going to put number 1 at the bottom. And towards the middle, I'm going to put the number 2. And then towards the top, I'm going to put number 3. So here's what I have so far. I'm going to try to describe this as if you're not seeing it. I drew a triangle. I drew two horizontal lines, one towards the bottom, one towards the top. I labeled the bottom section, what is. I labeled the top section, what can be. And then inside the larger body of the triangle, I have put the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Almost like thinking of three realms of three steps of a ladder. Just think of that. 1 was at the bottom, 2, and then 3. So let's go ahead and break this down. So what is this section, what is? What a leader has to do when you're speaking to other people is you have to define reality. Even though you might think it's obvious that it doesn't need explanation, it needs to be said out loud. So let's go to our football analogy, and I'm just going to make this up. Let's say that we were a team. Let's see, in the NFL now, I believe they play 17 games. So let's say we were a football team last year that went 4-13. 4-13. I think that. So I'm going to make a note to myself down in this area, 4-13. So when I talk to my team, I'm going to have to acknowledge that we were a football team last year, that we only won 4 games and we lost 13. It needs to be said. So if you're a business losing money, you need to say it. Saying, this last quarter, we lost X. This last year, we lost X. You got to tell the truth. Another way of looking at this, and I'll put this in parentheses just to remind myself, is what is involves the good, the bad, and you guessed it, the ugly. Has to include all of that. Now, depending upon how much time and how much knowledge those that are listening to you have determines how long you spend on this time. Now, I'm making this up, but so I'm going to say we went 4-13. I'm going to say that we lost 6 really close games. Really close games. In other words, they could have gone either way. And if they did, then that would have made us, what, 10-7. That's a possibility of making the playoffs. Maybe, maybe not. Depends what division that one might be in. I might talk about, let's just pretend that we were in the middle of the pack offensively. We were middle of the pack offensively. And so I wrote that down there as a reminder to myself. But we could say we were at the bottom defensively. So the reason why we lost most of those close games was because our defense couldn't hold. The other thing I would probably say in this fairy tale is that we've made some really good trades and draft picks in the off season. So I would write that. Draft picks and trades, particularly on the defensive side. And maybe I've added a couple key coaches that are experts in defense. So maybe I'll put that in there. So those are just reminders for me. Because, when I get up, I don't want to be a robot. I want to be able to think through things. When you stumble a little bit, even just now I said, but we all hate that word. That comes out of most of us. We just don't want to say it a lot. So we don't need to be polished speakers to be effective speakers. So when you get up in front of people as a leader, you have to start with what is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now here's why. Because if I got up and I started and I said with this 4-13 team, even though let's say 1/3 of the team is brand new, and I said, guys, we have a vision this year, and the vision is to win the Super Bowl. And I start my comments like that, I would be surprised if that locker room or that conference room, whoever was there, that there wouldn't be a snicker or a smile like, okay, that's funny. Now let's get back to business. So the purpose of talking about what is it actually gives you credibility as a leader that you know what's up. You've got 2 feet planted on the ground. You're not just speaking in the clouds. You're not a person of fantasy, but you know what's up. So when you say these things, most of the people should be giving you body language that is tracking with you. They're with you, right? So even if you say we were 4-13, we were not a good team last year. But, when you look back at it objectively, 6 of those games were really close. They could have gone either way. So we could have been 10-7. Now, when we look back, we had on those losses, we lost them in the last few minutes because our defense couldn't hold. We had some defensive holes on our team and in our schemes. So what we've done this year, this off season, is we've made some really good trades. That might be when you welcome Joe and Tom, and say, it's good to see you guys here, blah, blah, blah. We've also brought on a couple of defensive experts. You introduce them, da, 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 da. So you still haven't cast any vision. What you've done is you've brought everybody up to date, up to date. So that's the first thing that you got to do well in the communication triangle. All right. Then what do you do? Well, from here, you go all the way to the top. Now, granted, if we were 4-13 last year, and even if we would have won 10 games, which is a big if, I'm not sure that I would be comfortable as a head coach saying, our goal this year is to win the Super Bowl. What I might say is something like that, like this. So to answer the question, what can be? Guys, I've been looking at this. I've been studying it hard. I've been looking at the players that we've retained, the new players, coaching staffs, what we learned from last year. And I believe without a doubt that we can be a winning team this year, that we can finish as a winning team. And so what I've done is I've described a few things, didn't I? A winning team, but to be more specific, to finish with a winning record. I'm writing this out on my Remarkable here. And I'm also suggesting, oh, and I didn't say this, but I said, and you know what? With a winning record, depending upon how good that record is, we just might be able to make the playoffs. So I'm going to write playoffs with a question mark. Now, after I just got done describing the good and the bad and the ugly of the past and the present, and then I shift it and I say, okay, so what can we accomplish this year? I'm suggesting 3 things. We're going to be a winning team. The second is we're going to have a winning record. And third, we just might, as a result of those 2 things, a winning team, a winning culture, a winning record, we just might make the playoffs. Now that is something that I believe that, of course, there's probably 8 or 9 or 10 on the team out of 50 or 60 or 70 who want to believe that they can make the playoffs. And nothing's impossible, but what you want to do is you want to remember some scriptural wisdom that hope deferred makes the heart sick. So whenever you create false hope, you make people sick, literally sick, and they lose their energy, they lose their optimism, they lose their commitment. All right. So the first 2 pieces of communicating, and again, if you're sitting at a burger joint and you've got to make a presentation, as soon as you finish, shove down those fries and Diet Coke and head to your meeting, you could grab that napkin and you can do this and you can present something pretty powerful, especially if a lot of this is intuitive in you, it's already in you, you just have to organize it in your thinking. All right. So what is the good, bad, and the ugly? That's where you start. Then you talk about where we're going to go. What I failed to mention is I said this year. So it needs to have a time frame. So this year, we're going to be a winning team. We're going to have a winning record, and we just might make the playoffs. All right. So we've talked about, what is, we talked about what can be, but just by making those changes on the roster and the coaching staff is still a little too loosey-goosey to develop courage and confidence in the vision that you're casting. So it really needs to address the how. And that's what the middle section is about, is the how. I'm already assuming that these players have their whys figured out. Now, if they don't, that is an ongoing influencing part of leading. It's the day in and it's the day out. So when I look at this middle section where I have to explain how, you remember I wrote 3 letters, 1, 2, and 3. What those mean is that I don't want to give any more than 3, and I don't want 2. There's just something wrong in the universe with even numbers. I don't know how to explain it. And 1, I just don't know that in this context, 1 is a strategy, right? So the how is a strategy. And by the way, what I would call the communication triangle, since I just made that up, I would say Another nickname for this could be stubborn strategy. You want to create a stubborn strategy. And I'm writing that down on here for those watching that you can see. Because this is a strategy that if you know, a lot of leadership is about consistency, right? So you got to be consistent. So, okay, I'm making this up the top of my head. One of the first things I would probably say, you know, just kind of living in this world, if I were to live in this world, I would say, let's see, if I had to come up with 3 steps, it could be 3 steps, it could be 3 initiatives, but these 3 things have to kind of explain how we're going from the good, bad, and ugly to the what can be. So I would say that we would become, we would, okay, step 1, practice to become the best at the basics. And of course, you know, that's almost a platitude nowadays, you know, blocking and tackling, right? But the truth is that when you do watch football, there are a lot of missed tackles that could have and should have been made if the fundamentals were followed. Now, sometimes skilled players, you know how to get out of tackles, and that does happen. But generally speaking, teams that block and tackle the best win the games, right? So I might say, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to practice to become the best at the basics. Now, this is might be where I throw in another history. Last year, we had, you know, maybe someone count it, and we had 80 missed tackles. We were, you know, 18th in rushing. That means running the ball. And what we're saying there is that's probably a blocking scheme issue, right, with our O-line. So, okay, making this up as I go, I say the first thing we're going to do is we're going to practice to become the best at the basics. Number 2, I might say we are going to prepare thoroughly for each opponent. I think I spelled that wrong, but that's okay. Prepare thoroughly for each opponent. Again, I'm making this up. And the third thing that I might say, let's see, practice to become the best at the basics. In other words, we're going to celebrate becoming the best at the basics, the little things. We're going to prepare for each opponent. And you know, I need to throw another descriptive word in there, you know, prepare religiously maybe, or religiously prepare would be the better grammar, I think. Religiously prepare for each opponent. And what would the third one be? Well, I'm going to try this one on for size, coming to mind. We're going to practice trust and support for every team member. So in that case, what I might say is that because we're going to practice the basics and we're going to celebrate the basics, becoming the best at the basics, we're also going to trust one another to do their job. We're going to stay in our lane. We're going to do our job. And when somebody makes a mistake, because mistakes will happen because we're human, we're not going to drop our heads. We're not going to, you know, give them a dirty look. We're not going to do that. We might get in their face, but if we do get in their face, it'll be to encourage them. It'll be to say, let that go. Come on. And, you know, maybe this is a culture of trust and support, or trust and love, or, you know, whatever, you know, that would do. And then when I look at the second one, religiously prepare. So what I'm assuming here is that we didn't do that, you know, last year as well as we could have. You know, maybe I can point to, you guys might remember that we had a rough month on this month, and we did not prepare as much as we could prepare. All right. Now let me walk through this. Now that I have prepared it, let me walk through this talk. And you're going to notice how raw it is. I haven't practiced it. I don't have a script. All I do is I have a triangle in front of me that I'm actually using as my outline. It's not super neat, but I can follow it because it's basic and it's clear. All right, so here she goes. Hey guys, glad that you all came, that you're all here. I'm so excited about this coming year, but let's don't get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly of where we have come from and where we are at today. Now, if you agree with me, let me hear you. Nod your head, throw up your hand, whatever. So, as they say, I don't like this phrase, but they do say it. It is what it is. Well, that's not going to be true this year. But last year, this team, we went 4-13. 4-13. How do you guys feel about that? I know it's horrible. It's embarrassing, right? 4 wins. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Yeah, we don't want to be there, but that's a reality. That is the reality. We lost 13 games. Now let that sink in for a minute. Who wants to repeat that? I don't think there's a soul in here that wants to repeat that. All right. What else is true? Well, 6 of those 13 losses could have gone any way, could have gone either way. And when you look back at it, every single one of them, we had the lead, but we couldn't hold it to the end of the game. And that's why it was that much more devastating to us. When you look at the stats, we were about in the middle of the pack offensively, but we were at the very bottom defensively. Guys, it was a rough year, and those kind of years happen. But here's what's gone on since the off season. First, we've picked up some great draft picks. Welcome, and then I would mention these people. Maybe even have them stand up. Let's give that guy a high five. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. We've also have got some great rookies on the team that we've drafted, and I do the same thing. Get them up. Maybe make fun of them a little bit, maybe to see if they're shaving yet or whatever. You want to create some camaraderie, some laughter, because the good, bad, and the ugly doesn't have to be all dark. See, it can be dark, but it also needs to be light. It needs to bring reality. But then you can say, but you know what? That's not all. We've also brought on 2 defensive geniuses, one from such and such and another from such and such. So I'll tell you, man, we have made some good changes. Like I said, 6 games could have gone the other way. If we would have been 10-7 instead of 4-13, we might have made the playoffs last year, right? But that was last year. This is this year. So let me ask you. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm shifting now to the top of the triangle, the tip of the iceberg, answering the question, what can be? Let me ask you, what would you say if I said, I truly believe that this team right here, the team that's right here, right now in this locker room, this team will be a winning team? What if I said by winning team that you wouldn't just win games, but that you would end the season with a winning record this year? We would have a winning record this year. And if we have a winning record, as you know, we just might make the playoffs. Anytime you have a winning record, you've got a shot. You've got a shot. What would you say if that was not just our goal, but an achievable goal that we should do and we can do if we do it together? What do you say? What do you say? And I try to get, some positive feedback and, try to read the room. Hopefully I've done my homework to know that all of this is legit. And so then as that calms down, what I would do is I say, now you might say, okay, Are these wonderful young rookies on our team? Is that the magic? No offense, guys, but probably not, because it takes a team. What about some of these great trades? Man, you guys have you've strengthened us already. But it's a team. It's a team sport. But what about the coaches? And what about the guys that are still here from last year? Now, together, all of us, we can be this winning team with this winning record and maybe go to the playoffs. In fact, why don't we make that our goal? Let's make the playoffs. What do we have to do to get there? Well, let me suggest 3 things. The first is that we got to fall in love with the basics. And you guys know this, blocking and tackling. From the time we were in Pop Warner, we've got to learn how to block and tackle. But you know what? We're not going to do it grudgingly. We're going to say, yeah, I want to go back to the basics. I want to get the fundamentals. We're going to be known as the team that's got the fundamentals. We're going to practice to become the best at the basics. Did you know that we had 80 missed tackles and that we were 18th in rushing the ball? Yeah. So what if we made a commitment? If we make a commitment to becoming the best at the basics, that's step 1. Step 2, because we didn't do this all last year, step 2, and I take blame for some of these. I look past some of these. I own some of this, but we are going to religiously prepare for each opponent one at a time. We're not going to be intimidated by any opponent, and we're not going to look past any opponent. We're going to prepare. We're going to study. We're going to have respect for that opponent, but we're going to come out and ready to ball. That's what we're going to do. So number 1, we're going to become the best in this league at the basics. Number 2, we are going to prepare for you. We're going to be ready for you, whoever you are. And then third, let me tell you what kind of people we're going to be. Let me tell you what kind of tribe we're going to be. Let me tell you what kind of culture we're going to be. We're going to learn to trust one another. We're going to work hard, and we're going to learn our jobs. And because of that, we're going to trust each other to do our jobs. We're going to stay in our lanes. And when one of us makes a mistake, we are not going to come down on that brother. We're going to lift them up. We're going to help them. We're going to support them. We're going to encourage. And if we get in each other's face, it's so that we get better. We don't drag anyone down. This is a family. This is support. Let's do this. So what can be? And then I would go into the what can be one more time. We're going to win. We're going to have a winning record, or we might lose some, but we are going to win. And when people see us come to town or they come to our house, they know that they're going to be in a fight. And then we're going to have a winning record. And just watch this. We just might be in the playoffs. And who knows what happens then. All right, I need to take a little break from that. It's exhausting. Okay. So you can also do this, though, with even setting goals. And one of the things I've noticed about my own life, and also by those that I serve and try to help, is we often just have too many goals. If you stick to the triangle of communication, as it's awkwardly called today, and you follow this, the what is kind of helps you figure out what your holy discontent is. That one main thing that you want to change in your life over the next 90 days or 6 months or 12 months. And then that thing goes in that top triangle. And then, of course, you put together your strategy of how you do that. 1, 2, 3. Well, this was a totally different podcast. Maybe you enjoyed it. If you did, give me some feedback. I would sure appreciate it. If you have any questions about it, you know how to get a hold of me, Jim, at leadtodaycommunity.com. If you're not part of the Lead Today community, let me invite you. Go to leadtodaycommunity.com. That's leadtodaycommunity.com and sign up for Monday Moments. It's a weekly email that will encourage your leadership. Again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for telling a friend about the Today Counts show.